Hello, everyone. Welcome to Unnamed Church. Wherever you are, that is the right place to worship God. But today, I want to talk about God's goodness and faithfulness for us. Um, you know, I want to say God is good
All the time.
all the time.
God is good.
Yeah, you may experience that at church, right? Pastors and preachers sometimes they say, God is good. And audience answer, all the time. And all the time. And God is good, right? So do you really trust that God is good? So I want to share Bible verse. Psalm 105. For the Lord is good. His steadfast love endures forever, and his faithfulness to all generations. I really pray and hope that this is our true, sincere confession before God. You know, God, Lord, you are good and you are faithful for me. However, you know what? When our life is going very well, for example, your prayer has been answered and, amazing healing comes. And when, you know, your life changes dramatically or, some miraculous situation is in front of you, then it's pretty easy to say, wow, God, you are so good and you are faithful for me, right? It's very joyful. However, when your life is going a little bit in a different way than you want or you expected, for example, you struggle with something or you don't know what to do for the next step and you feel like you get stuck in something and also you feel isolated and alienated or you experience some failings at something, then it might be like oh, feel discouraged and quite challenging to say, wow, God, you are good and faithful, right? Then it might be like, God, are you there? Right? It's me too. It's actually happened to me too. Sometimes when my life is going really well and just very cheerfully, acknowledge God's goodness and faithfulness. However, some week like this week, I had some many things were going on. So this week, I had many things to think about and to, discern, and I felt discouraged. So I want to highlight that, Christian life is not only to experience God's miraculous work, but, Christian life is to live everyday normal life, faithfully in faith that can lead you to confess and acknowledge, God's goodness and faithfulness. So I want to share a Bible verse, Mark 8:11-12. The Pharisees came and began to question Jesus. As in times of Jesus, Pharisees all the time came to Jesus to trap him. This time also, they wanted to test him. So they asked him for a sign from heaven. You know, Pharisees, they wanted to see the sign. And it's like, Jesus, you are the Messiah. Then, show us a heavenly sign, some miraculous work. Then we will trust, we will believe it. Something like. However, what Jesus replied to them is very interesting. Verse 12, he sighed deeply. Can you see that? It's like, oh, guys, you came here to trap me again. You're asking for a sign. And then Jesus say that, why does this generation ask for a sign? And truly I tell you, no sign will be given to you. Isn't that really interesting? You know, Jesus can perform any miracle. And Jesus could show them a amazing sign that they feel like, oh, astonished. However, we really should know that Jesus doesn't use his ability, his miraculous sign to make us believe in him. We should understand the order. It should be opposite. You know what? When we purely believe in him, then we will experience his miraculous work. It's because of our faith. Our faith will lead us to experience his goodness and faithfulness, amazing work, not because we see his miraculous work and then we believe. It's not the order. So we really need to make sure that. So my first point is our faith will lead us to experience his goodness and faithfulness. You know, his goodness and faithfulness will be there when we trust that. When we trust, when we believe that he is good and faithful for me. If not, if we don't have a faith, what can we experience that, right? Think about it. You know, our godly ancestors, they kept their faith in any situation. The point is any situation. So can you imagine? We know Joseph, right? What's his life experience? He was sold to Egypt as a slave, and he was put in prison. What kind of a life it is, right? It's really challenging. However, he kept his faith in God. What about David in the Old Testament? You know, his life is tough. He ran away from King Saul because King Saul wanted to kill him. And also David, lived in many different hiding places. His life was very challenging, you know, finding out some other hiding places from King Saul who wanted to kill him. However, in the midst of hardship, he kept his faith and he confessed in the midst of his hardship that God, you are good and you are faithful for me. The situation of your life, what season you are going through, is good or hard, you know, difficult, easy, that doesn't determine God's goodness and faithfulness. So we really need to know that God's goodness and faithfulness are always there for us. So my second point is keep your trust on God's goodness and faithfulness in the midst of your challenges in life. You know, when I was younger, actually, you know, wherever I go, people liked me. I was young, I had many talents, and my personality was very outgoing. So people liked me. At that time, I thought, oh, it's really good. So I had a very upbeat mood many of the times. However, when I got older, okay, do I still look younger? That's good. But you know, as time went by, and I just felt like why life is so challenging. There are so many things to think about and to solve and to, you know, experience that breakthrough, you know, many obstacles and setbacks in the life path. So I just feel like why life is not easy, you know. However, it's really important to keep our trust on God's goodness and faithfulness, because our life challenges is not the thing to determine God's goodness and faithfulness. So I want to say, sometimes, like I say, that life is challenging. Sometimes you may go through some season that you feel like you are totally isolated. You feel like there's no connection. Sometimes you feel like you are totally alienated and you don't know how to overcome that situation. Yes, it's challenging. You need to find out how to overcome this time with the God. However, in the midst of that life challenges, one thing that we should keep in our life is to trust and acknowledge God's goodness and faithfulness are always there for us. Some people say, it's still hard to understand, life is hard, how can we really, see His goodness and faithfulness? Yes, there we go, I understand. So that's why I want to give you some example. You know, we know that the sun is always there, no matter it's rainy, cloudy, stormy, snowy. We know that the sun is always there during the day. However, when it's rainy, when it's cloudy, when it's stormy, when it's, what is this, stormy, we can't not see. But that doesn't mean that the sun is not there. It's the same thing. Our life situation is like the weather, some rainy weather, some tough situation, it's cloudy. Yeah, it's not easy to see the sun, the God's goodness and faithfulness. However, that doesn't mean that God's goodness and faithfulness are not there for us. It's always there for us. This is true. So we should trust that. So I really hope and pray that when that situation, the tough and challenging situation, just fade away, I'm sure you will realize that God's goodness and faithfulness always were there for you. I hope you really experience that. God bless you. Bye bye.